Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. We are going to continue working on our programs, working with Xcode. I just performed an update, so I'm at version 10.110b61, just for your information. Okay, so here's what I want to do. Let me go ahead and select Xcode so that I can go to File, New, Project. And what I want to work on today is the creation of variables. So let's go ahead and select the single view app and click next, and then we're going to give this thing a name. So what I'll do is I'll say CS157 intro to variables, something like that. And everything else you can type. You perhaps don't have a website, so you can just say com.citruscollege, say for example, and make sure that Swift is selected. If any of these other items are checked, you can remove the check marks, and then we'll click next. And then this is going to save your program in a particular location. I'm going to be creating this on an iPhone, so I'll say iPhone project. That's fine, and then I'll click create. Okay, so the first thing to note is that I get the screen with multiple panels, and what I want to do is I want to select the view controller, and with the view controller selected, it has limited amount of code. Now the view controller is tied with your main storyboard, and the main storyboard is going to be what your program is going to look like when you place these items on an iPhone. So right now I have the iPhone 8. If you don't want to have an iPhone 8 as your, like default display, you can change it to whatever you want. Like say for example, I have an iPhone 10, so I think this is the iPhone 10. No, that's the 10s, but that's okay. It's very similar. And since it doesn't fit on my screen, I'm going to hit this zoom out button so that I can get more information displayed on the screen. Okay. Well, the first thing that I want to do is I want to make it so that the user can enter a number here, another number here. I'll have a button that says calculate, and then I want to show their summation, difference, product, and quotient down here. So what I'll do is I'll click on this button, and that'll give me a listing of all the tools that are available that I can, all the objects that I can drag and drop to the form. So I'll just simply take this guy label, I'll drag and drop this somewhere over here, say for example. If you're not happy with the font size, well then we can just go over here to the attributes inspector, and you see that system 17 points is what the current setting is at. So I can just simply click on this arrow right over here to increase the font size, or I can click on this letter T, and that's just going to show me some various options that I have. Like for example, I can change the font size, I can change what the font looks like, whether it's italicized, bold, so forth and so on. Or I can just change the font altogether by clicking on this drop down, and then I can, well actually this gives me the option here to select custom, and then with custom you'll see that I have family, and I can select any type of family font that I want. Well, let's say that I select Futura, and instead of 17 points, I'm going to type in the number 24, press enter, and you can see 24 points over there. I'll click done. That looks okay to me. All right, instead of label, again, notice that over here I've selected the attributes inspector rather, and I'll click over here and then hit delete a couple of times, and notice now that the text is blank, and I want to say enter integer colon enter. Okay, so as soon as I press enter, you'll see that the label has changed to reflect the changes that I have over here in the inspector. So what I'll do is I'll take this guy and drag and drop it. You'll notice that that blue vertical line appears. So this is Xcode's way of saying this is probably the best location. You probably don't want to do this, so let me stop you right here. And you see I'm not towards the top. I'm going to move down about an inch or so, something like that. I think the next thing to do is to place a text field over here so that the user can enter an integer. So we'll click over here, the library, and we're going to take a look for our text field. Here's one. I'll drag and drop this onto the form, say something like this. Okay, well now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the width. So let me go over here. It looks like it snaps right here. And if I take this guy over here, I'm going to drag and drop. It looks like it snaps right there. That's fine. Now I want that to be comparable to the font that I have over here in terms of the size. This is 24 points, Futura. So I can change that over here as well. I'll just simply click on this button over here next to where it says font. And then I'm going to select custom. And I'll select Futura for the font type. And then over here, I'll just simply type in, did I say 24? I forgot already. Let me click down. Let's see here. Let me select over here. Yep, 24 points. So Futura medium 24 points, that's fine. Now, we don't have any text in there. By default, it's blank. But if I typed in blah, 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 press enter, you see what it looks like. And perhaps maybe I want this to be center aligned. So I can go over here to the alignment, press center aligned, and you see what that looks like. I like it. It looks good. But let me get rid of the blah, blah, blah. So I'll double click to select everything, press delete, then press enter. So now this thing is blank. Okay, I like it. I have the instruction for the user to enter integer 1. I have the text field in which they're going to enter it. So what I'll do is with my mouse pointed down here, I'm going to hold down the mouse, and actually I'm using a trackpad, so I'm holding down the index finger with one hand, and I'm using another index finger to move this, to just select these two. And then I'll copy and paste, which is Command C, Command V as in Victor, and then I will move the paste to some location, say for example right here. All right, now I'm going to unselect, reselect this guy over here, and I want to change that from integer, enter integer 1 to enter integer 2. So I'll just click over here, get rid of the 1, type in a 2, press enter. Okay, so the user now knows that they are going to enter an integer in this text field, and they're going to enter an integer in this text field. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to place a button over here. So let's go ahead and click over here at the library, and let's look for a button. I think that's up here. Here we go. And I'll just simply drag and drop a button over here. You can see here that it's centered, but inevitably what I want to do is I want to open this up so that I get that guide, the vertical guide that's on the right hand side. I'm going to drag and drop this resizing handle so that this vertical guide is over here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to type in the word calculate instead of the word button, so I'll double click, type in calculate, press enter, and that font is too small, font size. So currently it's set to 15. I think what I'll do is I'll click this guy over here and double click on the 15 and type in 24. Ah, that looks nice. And so I'll make the button just a little bit taller to accommodate that. Looks good. Now, if I wanted to, I could place a background color. You don't have to. This entire space right here is the space for the button, but if you want the user to kind of understand that this white space over here and this white space over here is also part of the button, I suppose one thing that we could do is we could put a background color. So over here, down here, it says background. And so let's see what happens if I select red, say for example. So you can see what happens. That's probably too much. Maybe like a lighter gray, perhaps. So let's see, this says light gray. That's better, right? I think that looks okay. Perhaps you don't like the color of the text. Right now it's set to text color, kind of like a bluish color. Maybe we want that to be black. So let's see here, if I click on this drop down and if I select the black color paint chip, you see what it looks like. And again, you can just make whatever choices you want in terms of the color. I think I'll just leave that at black color. That's fine with me. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I think I'll just take this label over here and copy and paste it. So Control C, I said Control, sorry, Command C and Command V as in Victor. So let's copy and paste. I'll put it over here like this. And I want to get rid of that text. It says enter integer 1. I think what I'll do over here is I'll go to the label. Let me double click so I can select everything, and I'll say summation, colon, something like that. And then what I want to do is I want to place a label over here where the answer is going to be. So when I click calculate, it'll take this number plus this number, and it'll place the result over here in this label. So I suppose I can just simply take this label over here, copy and paste, so that's Command C, Command V. Of course, I could also go to the edit menu option and say copy and paste. So you can see here Command C, Command V. Those are the shortcuts. And I'll just take this guy and see if I can make this level. So I'm moving this over here to the left-hand side so it snaps into place. And that's fine like that, I think. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two and let me move them collectively across the screen. Looks like that's centered. I like that, so let me let go. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to make sure that that text is going to be centered. So I'll select over here where it says alignment. I'll click center align. I think I want there to be a background color. So let's see here. It looks like I can scroll down over here and I see background. And let me click on this drop down and I want a very light gray color. So I'm going to go over here to custom. You see how I kind of scrolled all the way down to custom? And that's going to open up this dialog where I can select the kind of color. I can change the opacity, which basically means how transparent it is. So let's see what happens if I select a gray color. So if I select a gray color, you see what that looks like. Let's see what happens if I change the opacity. You can see that it's changing how transparent that is so that it gives me a little bit more of a mild gray. So I like that. Or I could just take this guy over here and drag it around to whatever color that I want. I want something mild. So I change the opacity back to 100 and I'm just dragging and dropping this thing. Or I could select this option over here with a bunch of different options and buttons and labels and numbers that I can enter. And so there's all kinds of different options when it comes to colors and how you can pick colors. If there's a particular color that you like and you want to remember it, you can drag it and drop it. That's why you see these colors over here. These are colors that I like for some of the various apps that I've created in the past. And so I just take it, I drag and drop it so that it becomes part of my color palette that I can choose from in the future. So anyway, however you want to select your color, you just pick one of these guys and then just simply drag and drop. You see a real-time preview of what it looks like. This one kind of has like a bluish look to it, and this one has more of a purple and more of a red, and so forth and so on. So I think maybe I'll select something on the blue side like that. Let me see. Let me unselect. That's fine. If you want to make it a little bit darker, that's okay too. Okay, so I'll select this guy. And first of all, let me close this colors dialog. And I want to get rid of the text. So let me double click. Actually, 1, 2, 3, triple click. Type in or press delete on the keyboard, press enter. Now I know it looks like there's nothing there. There's a label here. Sorry, let me go back over here. Actually, sorry, let me undo. Command Z. Let me undo here. So here's the label. And let's see here. I think I did something wrong because when I triple click and I press delete and then press enter, it looks like it's not resizing it here. Wow, look at that. That's not good. All right, look at what I had to do. I had to kind of resize this. And so maybe what I should do, let me undo. I don't recall ever having to do this, so sorry about this. It's kind of like I'm doing this live. I think maybe there was a change to Xcode. Look at that. If I get rid of everything except for S, but then I resize it, and let's see here if I do something like this. Okay, so I do that, and then if I get rid of the S, what happens? Press enter. Okay, that's weird. I don't recall this type of behavior happening in the past, so I'm not sure what's going on. But in any case, you see what I had to do. I basically just had to get rid of the letters until that letter S, resize this thing to whatever I want it to be. And now that I have it what it's supposed to look like, I'm going to unselect by clicking over here. I'm going to hold down my index finger on my trackpad, select these two, or you could use your mouse, of course, let go. Control C, Control V. I keep on saying Control, I meant Command because I'm on a Macintosh. And I'll just simply drag and drop like this, and then Command V as in Victor. I'll put another guy over here, just snaps into place. Good. Command V as in Victor. And I'll just put that like this. Okay, let me unselect. And I'm going to change that word where it's a summation to difference. So let me 1, 2, 3, triple click, difference, colon. All right. And then this guy over here, let me 1, 2, 3, triple click, product. And then this guy over here, 1, 2, 3, triple click, and quotient, colon. Now, if you wanted all of these colons to kind of line up, one thing that I could do, so let me just zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. I could take this difference and I'm going to drag and drop that to the right. And so you see that there's a line right here that appears, and that's just showing that it's aligned on the right-hand side. So I'll do the same thing over here. It's aligned on the right-hand side, and then I'll just finally do that over here like this. Looks like it's aligned right there. There we go. So all these colons are aligned. Let me zoom out again. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, of course, there's tons of more stuff that you could add to your, graphical user interface for your phone. Let's just work with this. This is fine. I like to save my work, so what I do is I hit Command S. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to click on File and then click on Save. But when I say save your work, I'll just do this. I'll just say Command S, and we'll save our work. All right. So the next thing to do is to type in the code, and we're going to do that in just a minute. Okay, so now that we're ready to type in the code that will work when the user clicks the button, and it will obtain the number that's typed into this text field as well as the number typed in this text field, and we want to add, subtract, multiply, and divide and place the results here. So what I'll need to do is I like using this guy over here where I can split the screen and show code and my form as well. So if I click this guy, you see how it splits up the screen. So over here, this is the storyboard, and over here, this is the code associated with this storyboard. Now, how do I know that? It's supposed to be this guy, the view controller. Well, first of all, if I select this top bar right here, which is the view or the main storyboard for this particular view, if I click on this button over here, actually, let me see here. Is it this one? Things have changed around a little bit in Xcode. Oh, I see. I have to click this guy. Sorry about that. This guy right here is going to indicate the class file that is associated with this graphical user interface. So as you can see over here, when I click on the identity inspector, it says class, and it's saying, well, the file that's associated with this graphical user interface or this view is view controller. Now, Xcode is smart enough to know that when I click this, when I go back over here to single view, when I click this, it's thinking, or it's going to analyze that I am creating I want to affect the code for this particular view. So when I click this, it automatically shows up over here where it says view controller. So if I click over here, that's view controller. But notice what happens if I select something else, like maybe I select app delegate, or I select view controller. You can see what happens to the display here. When I select the main storyboard, okay, so that appears over here, and then automatically it selects this. Now, if I wanted to change that to manually select a different file, this is the approach that I would take. Maybe I want to select the app delegate, say, for example. So this is what it would look like. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this automatic approach. So it's the automatic. It's going to select the view controller Swift file, and that's what I want because this is the file. This is the class file, this guy over here, the view controller.swift file that is associated with this particular view or this particular graphical user interface. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. I think what I'll do is I'll click over here and press enter a couple of times because what I want to do is I want to create an association of this text box here in my code. And the way to do that is I'll just simply click over here, I'll hover and select this text field. I'm pressing Control on my keyboard, the Control button. I'm going to hold that down, I'm pressing it down, and I'm going to drag and drop this guy over here onto my view controller.swift file. Let go, and then I'm also letting go of Control as well on my keyboard. And what I'm about to do is to create a reference here in code to this graphical user interface object, namely this text field. Now for me, I've mentioned in the previous video that I like to use the Hungarian notation, so I'll type in txt because this is a text field, and then I want to type in some name that's relevant to what this thing is. So I'll just simply type in integer. 1. So this is the txt, or text field, where the user is supposed to type in integer 1. So txt integer 1. It is a text field. I'm going to leave everything else as is and just simply click connect. So now you'll see that there is a connection between this variable here in this code and the graphical user interface. In fact, when I hover on top of this, you'll see that this thing is highlighted. So as you can see, this is the case over here. Okay, let me select this guy, and I want to do the same thing. I want to take this, and I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard, and I'm going to drag underneath here somewhere. That's fine. Let go of the keyboard. And this is a text field, so I'll type in txt for the Hungarian notation, and I'll type in integer 2. All right, and everything else stays the same. Click connect. And now you can see that there is a reference here, a code reference to the item in our form. Now I'm going to place my cursor over here, and I'll just press delete to get rid of that blank space. And as you can see here, I have these 2 items. Okay, now I want to make a mistake deliberately so that if you happen to make a mistake, you'll know how to recover from this. So let's say that I take this button, and I want to do the same thing. I should drag and drop and hold down Control. I should drag and drop over here. We'll say btn calculate. But um, let's say that I accidentally drop on top of this guy right here. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold down Control. I'm making a mistake. Don't do this. Just watch the show. I'm holding down Control. I'm going to take this. I'm going to drag it, and I accidentally. Actually, it's not letting me do that. It's not letting me do the accidental thing that I want to do. Hold on for a second here. Let me go back over here, and let's select this guy again. And let's say that I accidentally drag and drop on this guy right here. Ah, here we go. This is what I wanted to do. So it looks like, let me just explain this before I continue. It looks like it won't take a button and drag it on top of a UI text field because Xcode is intelligent enough to know that you can't do that. But I could accidentally take another text field and drag it accidentally on top of another existing text field. We know that this is txt integer 2. I'm going to take this and drag it accidentally, on purpose, on top of txt integer 1. So watch this. This is a mistake. Don't do this. I'm holding down Control. I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to drag it right on top of this. Let go. And I don't see anything that has popped up. But let me tell you something. Something bad has happened. Because when I hover on top of this, this is referring to, look at that. Look at this. It's supposed to be referring to this first guy, but because of what I just did, you can see that txt integer 2 text box is selected. When I hover on top of this, txt integer 2 is also selected. So what's going on? How can I recover from this? Well, I make these kinds of mistakes all the time because I drag and drop too fast. I'm impatient. How do I recover? Well, first of all, what I want you to do is to open up this guy over here. So it's called the Connections Inspector. So let's open this guy up. Let's select this button, or this text field right here. So as you can see, this text field has nothing over here. Let's select this text field. Look at this. This guy has 2 items here that are referred in code. So it looks like txt1 is referring to this, and txt integer 2 is referring to this. So there's a couple things we could do. I could just simply click this X and click this X to get rid and start all over again. Or I could just get rid of the one that is a mistake. So for example, for this guy over here, nothing exists over here. When I select this text box, I have these 2. I don't want that. I want to just be a reference to txt integer 2. So I'll click this X over here and get rid of that. Now you'll notice that the circle is open because it doesn't have a reference to that first text box. So now I can just simply go over here, select the text box, hold Control on the keyboard, hover on top of txt integer 1, let go, and so now that dot has been filled, and so notice what happens. This text box has a code reference of txt integer 1. This text box has a code reference of txt integer 2, and in fact, if I hover on top of this, you see that the appropriate text field is selected. If I hover on top of this, the appropriate text field is selected. So this guy over here is very helpful, the Connections Inspector, because if you make a mistake, you can just simply get rid of the stuff that you made a mistake. Like for example, let me just go ahead and do this. Let me go over here and click this X, click over here and click this X. Okay, so there's absolutely no reference, and that's why you see the open circles over here. Now I can make an adjustment, so I can just go over here, drag and drop to txt integer 1, Go over here, control drop to txt integer 2, and now the circles are filled. In fact, if I hover on this, yes. If I hover on this, yes. I'm looking over here, the correct items are selected. Okay, so hopefully that'll help you in the future if you make mistakes and you're thinking, oh gosh, Professor Solis didn't make a mistake on the video and he's going on. Well, if you make this mistake, now you know how to recover from it. Okay. Actually, I do not want to create a reference to this button. What I want to do is this is going to be an action. When I click the button, I want some action to occur. But for these labels, I definitely want to create a reference because I want to obtain the values from these labels. So what I'll do is I'll select this guy. I'm going to hold down Control on the keyboard, drag and drop, let go. And this is a label, so I'll type in LBL. And as you can see here, it's summation. So what I'll do is I'll type in summation like this. Everything else looks good. Click connect. All right, I like that. And I'm going to do the same thing for this label. So I'll select it, press Control on the keyboard, drag and drop, let go, LBL difference. Looks good. Click connect. And I'm going to do the same thing for this guy over here, product. So let me scroll down a little bit. Hover on top of this, control on the keyboard, and I'll just let go right here. And then LBL product, press enter. And then finally, quotient. Now you'll see that when I press control on the keyboard, I'm being very careful. You see that line that extends right there? If you accidentally go over here, that's okay too. That's fine. All you have to do is just type in LBL quotient, press enter, and then there's a little space over here. No problem. I'll just press delete, delete, get rid of that space. And I can see clearly just from the groupings here that these are the text items, these are the label items. So I like it. Everything is looking pretty good. Okay, now in terms of the button, I don't want a reference to this. I want an action to be performed when I click on this button. So what I'll do is I can just simply go over here and hit enter a couple of times. And I intend on placing the code here that's going to refer to the action that will be performed when the user clicks on this button. So let's go back over here. Let me select this. Actually, I don't like it in this mode. I'm going to unselect, reselect. Okay, now the button is selected. I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard. I'll take this guy and drag and drop over here like this. Now, I don't want there to be an outlet, which is a reference to this button. I don't want that. Instead, I want action. What action do I want to perform when I click this button? That's what I'm creating the section or creating the code chunk for. Now, I like to do this. I like to say touched. And then, what is the name of the button? Well, that's the calculate button. So calculate. I don't think you see a lot of Apple users or Apple developers do stuff like this. But for me, when I do a quick search, and if I'm looking for, like if I have several buttons over here, if I name them all touched, like touched calculate, touched submit, touched results, touched output, whatever, I can just do a quick find for touched, and then it shows me that quick listing. It's just easier for me to do it this way. Maybe you just want to type in calculate over here. That's okay too. All right, in terms of type, you have to indicate that this is a UI button. It's a button, right? So you'll select UI button, and then here you have some options like, well, when the user lifts up off the touchpad or off of the key, the mouse rather, is that when we want the action to occur, or with any of these other items, any of these other changes? What is the effect that you want in terms of releasing the button, or when the button goes down, or when I touch drag inside? You have all these options. So we'll just leave this guy over here at touch up inside, leave it at sender, click connect. Okay, so you'll notice that this function has been created for you. So in other words, when I, in run mode, click this button, this is where I go to execute the code. All right, well, what code is it that I want there to be executed? Well, first of all, let me type a comment. So // declarations, declarations. So this is a comment, the /2 slashes, and that's like, it's not a Swift statement. It is simply a way to let you know, like a sticky, a note to yourself, a personal note to yourself. This is what we are about to do. Well, I'm about to perform a bunch of declarations. So when you perform a declaration, what you're doing is you're saying, I want to create some sort of a representation that's meaningful. If I type in var and summation, say for example, colon, and then the word double. All right, so what's going to happen over here is I am about to reserve in memory a word here, a variable. A variable varies. And so in other words, I can put something in for this word summation. This is a variable. Now, what kind of data do I expect to hold here? Well, it says I can hold a double. Well, if I'm going to hold a double, maybe I should change this. I said enter integer 1. Maybe I should just say enter num1 or number 1 because an integer is a whole number. A double is a number that has a decimal point. So I'm being a little bit inconsistent here. And I think I better make the change over here. So what I'll do is I'll select this guy over here. Let me select the attributes inspector. It says enter integer 1. I'm going to double click on that word integer. Enter number. Enter. Yeah, enter number 1. I like that. And I'll have to do the same thing over here because a number can be an integer. A number can be a real number. And so that's what a double is. A double is a real number. So let me just, you don't type this. Let me just show you what I'm talking about here as part of this lecture. So examples of doubles. All right, so that would be like 1.2. How about negative 5.0? How about negative 0.0 or positive 0.0? So in other words, a double is a number with a decimal point. Now, if I typed in integer like this, well, an integer is just a whole number. So an integer would be, for example, 5, negative 4, 0. Those are all examples of whole numbers or integers. Well, in this case, I want the user to be able to type a real number. A real number is a number with a decimal point. So in other words, they could enter 5 over here, they could enter 2, or they could enter 5.5 or 3.4, whatever they want to enter. And then we can determine what that sum, difference, product, and quotient is. So, okay, made a little bit of an adjustment here on the fly. That's okay. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create another variable. So I'm going to say var difference colon, and this will also be of type double. So what I'm saying here is I have another variable and I intend this thing to hold a number. What type of number is it? It's going to be a double, which you now know means it's a number that holds a decimal point. And so I type in the word var over here to indicate that this is a variable. And so now let me go ahead and type in the following. So we'll say product double and var quotient, again, double. Now I want to be able to obtain the user number that's going to be entered here and the user number that's going to be entered here. So what I'll do is I'll click over here and say var user num1, and that is going to be of type double. And then var user num2, and that also is going to be of type double. So you'll get these warnings that appear indicating, hey, you created this, but it was never used. All right, don't worry about that. We're going to use them. This is just Xcode's error or warning system popping up to let you know, hey, you have these variables here, you haven't used them. These aren't considered errors, they're considered warnings. If they were errors, it wouldn't let you run the code, but with warnings, you could still run the code. Okay, so the first thing that we do is we created our declarations, which is basically those variables that we need to be able to contain the data from the user and also display data back to the user. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is press enter and type in get user input. All right, so in the get user input section, what I want to do is I want to obtain the data from these text fields, but here's the problem. This is a text, as you can see over here. This contains text. Even though you typed in a number here, like 3 and 4 over here, that 3 would be treated as a text. That 4 would be treated as a text. So what I have to do is I have to convert that text into a number. So what I'll do is over here in the get user input, I'm going to say, first of all, put into num1, and this is called the assignment operator in this context. It's not called the equal symbol. I'm going to cast this thing or convert it into a double, specifically txt, and I'm not going to type anything more. As soon as I typed in that txt, you can see that this autocorrect appeared, and so if I just double click on this guy over here, txt integer 1, specifically dot te. Looks like the text came up. Let me double click on that guy right there. And now I want to specifically refer to this guy. So you're going to get these, these messages that appear. If I click on this guy right here, it shows me, hey, what is it that you want to do? Well, inevitably, if I click on this fix right here, it's going to put an exclamation mark over here. If I click on this guy, it's going to say, okay, so you have this. This doesn't seem to work. I want you to put an exclamation mark inside there as well. I'm not going to explain why you're doing this right now. Later on, we'll get to that in terms of what this exclamation mark means. Right now, you're just mimicking what I'm doing. So let me convert this Swift statement into English. Get the text from this text field. Okay, so get the text that's typed in that text field. Now I want you to treat that or convert it into a double. So if this is, maybe like, let me do this. If this is quote, hit enter, quote 5.2. If that's what was entered, notice the quotation marks there. In other words, this is treated like a string. I'm about to take that string and convert it to a double. So in other words, what it would do is it would change that quote 5.2 to the actual number 5.2. All right, let me undo and go back to what I had before, which was this. So you're about to take the text from this text field, convert it into a double or a number, and then assign it to the variable user1, usernum1, which as you can see is already a double. So that's how I get a text item, as you can see over here, text item, and convert that text item into a number using this approach. This is called casting. So we're going to cast this guy over here as a double. Well, let's do the same thing for user num2. In fact, I'm not going to finish typing. That's the guy that I want. Double click. What am I going to assign to this? Well, first of all, I'm going to convert to a double whatever is inside of txt integer 2. So I double click, dot text, and you know that for right now, just put the exclamation mark, inside next to the text and then outside, just like this. We'll go over this in a future video lesson. All right, so that's how I obtain the data from these text fields, convert them, place them into a variable that I created above. Now we are ready for a calculation. All right, so in terms of our calculation, I want to determine the sum. Well, I have a variable over here called summation. So did you see what I did? Well, as soon as I typed in SUM, then the autocorrect shows me this summation. Yep, that's the one that I want. I'll double click it. What am I going to assign to this? Well, I'm going to assign usernum1, and I'll double click here, plus usernum2. Double click and put the number 2. Okay, good. So this is going to calculate the summation and place the answer into the variable summation. So it's going to perform an addition. Well, in terms of what I'm going to do for difference, so I'll just say usernum1. So this time I'll put the arrow down, hit tab, and tab again. That's the one that I want. Minus, and then I'll type in user. Okay, so I want this guy right here. So I use my arrows right there, and then I'll hit tab, tab. Okay, that's the one that I want. Nice. Let's perform the calculation for product. So I'll type in product. And again, I want the user num, so user num1. I'll use my arrows with the tab. And then I'm going to say times, so asterisk. And then user num2, that's this guy right here, tab, tab. Okay, it looks good. We want to determine what the quotient is. So that's going to be user num1, so tab, tab. And we'll say divided by user num2, this guy right here, tab, tab. Perfect. All right, so that is our calculation for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and we are placing all of those items into the appropriate variables. So here's how you would translate this statement right here. You would start from the right-hand side because that's an assignment operator. And you're saying take usernum, add it to usernum2, assign that into the variable summation. So you can think of this as a box. You are about to put the right-hand side into the left-hand side. You're about to put this information into the box. The name of that box is summation. So after you add these items, put that information or the result into this variable summation. Technically speaking, we say this is assignment. What we're about to do is to add these two variables, and we are about to assign that into the variable summation. All right, after the calculation, then let me type in a comment that says output. And in the output section, we want to take the information that we were able to solve over here and place the results into these labels. Okay, well, let's say, for example, that I forgot the name of this label. That's why I love the Hungarian notation, because if you type in LBL, now you have a listing of all your labels. And in this case, I'm looking for summation, so I'll just simply double click this guy. Now, what property of that label is it that I'm trying to affect? I'm trying to affect the .te. Look at that, I don't even have to type anymore. Text is what I want. I'll just simply double click this. The assignment operator, what am I trying to do? Now don't do this. Let me make a mistake on purpose. See, I want the summation to go into here. I want to do this. This is a mistake because this right here is a double. I am trying to put a double into a text property. Well, I can't do that. What I have to do is I have to put a string into a text property, because that's what a text is. A text is a string. What is a string? A string is something like this, Robert. It's something enclosed within quotation marks. Okay, pop quiz. Is this a string? Yes, because it's enclosed within quotation marks. Is this a string? Yes, because it's enclosed within quotation marks. Is this a string? Yep, because it's within quotation marks. So a string is something within quotation marks. What I need to do is I need to type in the word string, open and close parens, put my cursor right in between the parentheses. What I intend on doing is taking summation, there it is, let me double click, which is a double, take that double, convert it into a string, and then assign it to the text property of this particular label. So that's exactly what I'm going to do for the rest of the items. I'll say LBL and its difference that I want to work with. So now let me use the arrows. So arrow, arrow, arrow down, hit tab, dot te, that's what I want, tab, text, assignment operator, string, open and close parens, put my cursor right back into there. What is it that I want? The variable difference. So I type in difference. I don't even have to type in the whole thing. I love this autocorrect. See, in Visual Studio, we call it IntelliSense. But here in Xcode with Apple, hey, they don't want to copy Microsoft, right? So they call it autocorrect, I think. All right, so let's do this. Let's say that I take in the product .text, the text. All right, now I could do this. I could type in string, whatever the product is, and I'm going to show you a modification to this in just a moment. And then we'll take LBL quotient dot text, and we'll type in string, open and close parens, put the cursor right back into there, and we'll type in quotient. And then I just hit tab. All right, so we're done with our program. Typically, this is what you'll do. You'll create your declarations, which is telling the operating system, hey, I need you to give me memory that will store a double. And by the way, the name of that memory location, we'll call it summation. I need you to create memory that will allow me to store a double, another double, and by the way, for that memory location, we'll call it difference, and so forth and so on. We get the user input because the user is going to give us the data via these two text fields. We're going to perform a calculation and place the results into the variables that we created over here. And then finally, we're going to output the results. And the output will be in the form of these labels on this graphical user interface. And technically speaking, we call these guys views, right? So these are views, and we place the information to these labels, but I have to take these numbers, convert them into a string, or cast these as strings, and then we assign that to the text property of any of these given labels. Okay, so we're finished with this. Let me save my work, and let's run. So I like to click this guy over here. I think I just do that out of habit, but if you clicked on product, run, or command R, they all do the same thing. So let me just go ahead and run. Hopefully I don't have any mistakes in the code, so the build succeeded, nice. So now what this is going to do is it's going to open up the simulator, and we'll run this in the simulator. Now over here I see that I'm running this on an iPhone XR or an iPhone XR, but I could change that, of course, and I'll change that in just a second here. So right now it's launching. It usually takes a little bit of time initially when you have when the simulator is not open. Eventually this is going to open it up in the simulator, so let's see what it looks like here. Still loading up. There it is. Okay, so let me type in a number. Let me click over here, and I'll type in 5. Now this appears, so I can use my keyboard, or I can use the keyboard that's supplied over here. Oh, would like to access the microphone? Sure, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so over here I will select 5, and let me click over here, and I will select the number 2, and I'll say calculate. Okay, so summation 7.0, difference 3.0, product 10. Yep, that's right, 5 times 2 is 10. Quotient 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Nice. Now I don't have to type in whole numbers. I could type in like 5, let me go over here to numbers, 0.6, say for example. And over here I'm going to click, select the number keyboard, 0.2, say for example, and click calculate. Okay, so now notice this. For the summation and the product, no big deal, but for the difference, I have this number is so big, it looks like it goes 3.9999999, so forth and so on. Here I have some sort of a repeating value, 2.54545454, so forth and so on. Maybe what I want to do is I want to limit the answer to just one number after the decimal point, and not multiple numbers after the decimal point. Well, I can control that. So here's what I'm going to do. I don't want to close the simulator. I don't want to quit this guy. What I'll do is this button over here, which belongs to Xcode, I'll click this guy, which stops the program. So if I hit Command Tab, you can see here that the simulator is still running. Let's let me Command Tab back over here to Xcode. I just have stopped the program. The program's not running. This panel down here opens up to give you some additional information. Don't worry about this guy right here. So if you click this over here where it says hide or show the debug area, if you click that, that'll go away, and it just gives you a little bit more screen real estate. Okay, so in terms of the summation and the difference, I think that's fine as is. But I'm going to comment out this label and this label. And let me show you a different approach. So this is, version 2. LBL product, okay, dot text. That part is still the same. This part is still the same in terms of we are going to be converting the stuff that's inside of the parentheses. We are going to be converting that to a string. Well, what are you going to be converting to a string? One of the things that I can do is I can format product. Let's see, I don't want to do this. Don't do this. We've done that already. But the problem with this is it may give us, 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, or 55555 after. That gives us a bunch of numbers after the decimal point. And we want to control how many numbers are being displayed after the decimal point. So what I'll do is this. I'll type in format, colon, all right, within quotation marks, percent symbol, dot. Okay, how many numbers after the decimal point? Let's say 3 numbers after the decimal point. And I'm going to put the number or the letter F here, and I'm going to close that quotation mark, comma. Now, what number do I mean to format? Product. All right, what does all this mean? All right, so what this means is the following. I want you to display the number in such a way as it gives me 3 numbers after the decimal point. That's what this means. Maybe I want no numbers after the decimal point. So I would do that. Maybe I want 1 number after the decimal point. So I would do this. So this F right here means that in terms of this floating point number, this is controlling the number of digits after the decimal point. So let me go back to the original 3 that I have over here, just so that you can see what it looks like. And then we'll go back over here and change the code a little bit so we can see the effect that it has. Well, I'm going to do the same thing over here for LBL quotient. And I'll say dot text. This is going to be a string conversion, so I'll open and close the parens, put my cursor back over there, and the same thing, format. Oh, look at that. I typed in format and hit tab, and look at this. It just appeared like this, so this is kind of cool. It kind of shows me what it is that I have to do. Well, I have to type a string here, so I'll do the same thing. I'll type a quote, percent symbol, dot 3F, and then I'll hit tab, and then what is the argument? Well, in this case, the quotient. is the argument. I intend on displaying the quotient in this format, namely, give me 3 numbers after the decimal point. Well, let's see what happens here. So let me go ahead and run. Give it a couple seconds. Now that I know that the simulator is open in the background, I should open this up pretty quickly. Okay, so let's see what happens now if I type in, I forgot what I typed. I think I typed in 5.3 and 2.2. I don't remember what I typed in, so let's see what happens. All right, so notice over here that for the product and for the quotient, we see 3 numbers after the decimal point. Let me move this over here, which is exactly what I told it to do, only display 3 numbers after the decimal point. All right, notice also that for addition and difference, I did not do that. That's why for the difference, you see that this number goes on and on and on, because for difference, I didn't format the output. I only did that for product and quotient, which is why you see this over here. So let me stop the program, and let's see what happens. Let's play around with this. Let me type in a 0 here and a 0 here. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I'll run the program. It should build it and show it to me on the simulator pretty quickly. So let's see here. I'll type in 5.4. I'm using the keyboard on my laptop this time. Let's see here, 2.2, say for example. Click calculate. Notice that there are no numbers after the decimal point. No numbers after the decimal point for product or for quotient, because I told you no numbers after the decimal point. That's what that 0 means right there. Okay, let me stop the program. And let's do an experiment. Let's see what happens if I say, okay, give me, okay, so it says no numbers after the decimal point. I'm sorry, let me leave it like that. I'm going to run the program again. And let's see what happens if I type in a 5 and a 2. So if I type in a 5 here, and if I type in a 2 here and click calculate, well, now this is interesting, because you know that 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. But notice what has happened over here. Over here I said I want no numbers after the decimal point. So you would think, well, 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5, let's round that up to 3. But it did not round it up to 3. Because what is this doing? It's taking the 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5. It's taking the 2 and displaying it. The 0.5, it's ignoring it because I'm saying no numbers after the decimal point. So in other words, what I'm trying to say to you is no rounding takes place. Basically, what you're saying here is give me the 2 from the 2.5. Because I want no numbers after the decimal point. So no rounding. This thing could be 2.9999999. Well, what is the integer portion of that answer? It's 2. Even though I have the 0.9999, so you would think round up to 3, this won't do that. It just gives you the integer portion of the answer. Okay, so I'll click the stop button, and then you just determine whatever you want. Maybe you want 2 numbers after the decimal point, say for example. And if you wanted to apply this to the sum and to the difference, you could do that as well. It's up to you how you want to do this. So let's say that I leave it like this. I click the run the program button, which is this guy over here. Give it a second over here. And let's see what happens now if I type in 5, tab 2, and then I'll click the calculate button. Sure enough, 5 plus 2 is 7. 5 minus 2 is 3. 5 times 2 is 10. And 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, but because I said show me 2 numbers after the decimal point, that's why you see 2 numbers after the decimal point for the product and for the quotient. And that is it. So this was a very gentle introduction to the usage of variables and how we can create memory locations that mean something to us. There's a memory location inside of your computer called summation. There's a memory location inside of your computer called difference, and so forth and so on. Oh, and by the way, what kind of data does this thing hold? Does it hold an integer? Does it hold a double? Does it hold a boolean? Does it hold a float? Does it hold a character? Does it hold a string? I mean, it can hold anything. Well, in this case, I'm saying, yeah, I want this thing to hold a double. So, in other words, what we're doing is we're saying there are different data types. We have whole numbers. We have, in this case, this is a double, which is a real number, a number with a decimal point. And you say, hey, Professor Solis, what if it's just 5? Well, guess what? That's really 5.0 if it's a double. So, in other words, a double is a number with a decimal point, and we are going to be putting that and we're going to be using summation as a variable that varies, right? This number can change. It's not a constant. It varies. And that's going to be based on what the user types in for user number 1, number 2, and then we do these calculations. And so that's going to be placed into these various items over here, and then we display an output, and I explained how you have different ways of displaying that output. So let me go back over here, that single view, and of course if you don't like this thing being output to an iPhone XR or an iPhone XR, maybe you want to display this thing on an iPhone 6 Plus. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So when I click this guy to run the program, it's going to rebuild it and it's going to display it on an iPhone 6 Plus. Now, be careful. You don't want to run a bunch of simulators in the background because these simulators are memory hogs. In fact, I hear my fan on my laptop turning on. So you can see over here what it looks like for this guy. Now let me just let me see what items that I have available. Look at this. So I have, this is the iPhone XR, I think, and this is the iPhone 6 Plus. Do you see how both of these simulators are running? It's just that I wanted this program to run on an iPhone 6 Plus. So when you use a bunch of these simulators, they become memory hogs. So let me stop this. Now that I'm finished with this, I'm going to go back to the simulator and I'll quit the simulator. And then that takes, I'll go back to Xcode and then I can continue to work on my stuff. This output panel, I don't worry about that at this stage. Click this over here. And I think that's it. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.